Welcome into the M&M Discipleship Podcast, where we discuss what it means to be a disciple of Christ. We aim to look for God in our daily lives, be in His Word, and strive to live out the teachings of Jesus. My name is Dakota Moody, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Michael Round. Michael, how are you this morning?
Good. Very cold. It's down in the 30s.
Yes, thank goodness that it started to get cold again. We didn't get in the 30s this morning. We've been in the 40s, but the fact that we're both wearing, long sleeve kind of sweatshirty things is certainly indicative of what the temperatures are right now. But I've been praying for these times though. This is the season of the year.
Yeah, it went from like summer to winter. Pretty well because it's 32 this morning, and there was a frost out there, and it was very nice. Very nice. But things are good your way, I guess.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm certainly very happy with the weather as it is. This is the most glorious time of the year for me. I appreciate not only the weather outside whenever you just are outside doing things. You know, I'm a golfer, so I can also golf without like dying every time, which is very nice to have. And also, as we know, this is the greatest time of year as well because of college football and all the wonderful things that are involved with that. I've added a decoration behind me, nice little golden cowboy hat. If you know, you know. But
I really need you to get that back to my daughter. So, please send it back.
Does she actually have a gold cowboy hat?
She does.
That's funny.
Oh man. But no, things are good. I want to share something with you specifically because I know you'll love it. Went to a restaurant yesterday, and if anybody's around Paducah, Kentucky, there is a place called the Patty's 1880s Settlement. It is a really cool place. They decorate for Christmas starting in September. But they were all decorated for Christmas, and they have a great restaurant and other, shops and things. It's a really cool place to go visit. But yeah, I had a great meal yesterday, eating amongst all kinds of Christmas decorations.
I'm so glad I was not with you there at that point. So that would just because listen, that's I think probably my least favorite time of this time of year. Two things. One is that when the leaves fall down, sometimes it's very hard to find your golf ball if you hit it off the fairway. That's number one. And then number two is the fact that quickly approaching is that particular season of the year, the Christmas time, and the fact that people keep wanting to push it earlier. I would like you to stay in your lane because my favorite holiday is Thanksgiving, and people just want to skip over it like it doesn't matter. I want the eating holiday. I want it to stay. I want that to be the priority, but no one else seems to want that, and I don't understand it. But you know what? That's fine.
Anyways, I just wanted you to know that.
Did they serve Christmas food, or are they just decorated for Christmas? And by the way, what would be Christmas food? But
yeah. No, it was
Tiki
just
pudding?
they had a wide ranging menu. I got a pork chop. That was one of the popular things. Really good. But they had a far-reaching menu. They had special pies and cakes. Another thing that when you buy an entree, they serve you bread in a flower pot. So they bring it out in a flower pot, and it comes over. It almost looks like a giant muffin,
Okay.
but it's bread. And then they have butter they serve it with, and a strawberry butter that they make there on site.
Strawberry
It's
butter.
very good.
That does sound
Yeah,
nice. This seems like
it's
a
very
very,
good.
very eclectic
Yes, yes,
restaurant. This is a very interesting place.
yes. So if you're ever near Paducah, Kentucky, stop on in.
I don't know why
It's
you
a
would be, but
stretch your legs a little bit. I don't know. Maybe you're on the way to St. Louis or something. But
is that on the way to St. Louis? I guess from where you're
yeah,
at or something. I don't know. I'm about
yeah.
to say, yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
So
Anyway,
Paducah's right on 24, and 24 goes right into St. Louis.
yeah, I'm just trying to remember because I made that drive one time from Western North Carolina. Technically, I drove from Arkansas one time, and then another time I drove from North Carolina to St. Louis. So that was, and I don't remember the roads I was on half the time, to be honest with you. All I remember is whenever I was in Indiana, that was the least visually pleasing state I've ever been in my entire life.
Mm. How long
So
were you in Indiana? Like,
no offense
did
for
you
the
just kind
people
of clip
who
through
do.
it?
Yes, I did everything. It was the southern, like the southernmost reaches of Indiana, I think. I have
Okay.
no idea what road I couldn't even tell you what road I was on. All I know is I got immediately there and I was like, there is nothing here to even
Mhm.
slightly make me want to look anywhere other than just the pavement in front of me. No
So
offense,
I've heard
you're from Indiana and you think that you are from a very nice place. I just did not see anything there myself.
I've heard that there's some nice cities up north, like Terre Haute, and of course Indianapolis is, got some cool things about it. But yeah, a lot of farmland.
That was a lot of what it was. It was just a lot of that, and it was.
Mm.
You said it was not the most. It was the state that I may have spent the least amount of time in as I was driving through Illinois and then Indiana and then I think Kentucky down, and it was down through then Tennessee and then North Carolina. It was definitely the state that I spent I think the shortest amount of time in, but also it felt like the longest. Um,
Mm.
just because it was not visually pleasing at all. Again, no offense to any Indianans out there. Indianans? Is that what you call yourselves?
I don't
Indianites?
know. I don't
I
know.
don't know what you'd call yourselves, but if you were listening, but it was not very nice.
Maybe
So
next time you'll have a better experience.
I don't know if there will be a next time, but we'll leave it.
So
Anyway, so
Dakota,
yeah,
yeah.
now I was going to ask you, how about Michael, where is it that you have seen God this week?
Well, I would say that the last few days I've been with a group of preachers, and that has been a really unique and beneficial experience to be encouraged and to see what other people are doing in ministry and see how God is working through ministries and things. That's what I've seen, and just how it's hard to explain, but when you get around preachers, you're able to talk about different things and they're able to understand certain things that you go through, and that's just very encouraging. And so God God has designed the church in such a special way that we all have people that we can rely on and lean on for encouragement. And I think God uses different people in our life. So the encouragement that I've received is where I've seen God.
Mm.
What about you?
Yeah, I would second what you have to say because it's always encouraging as a minister to be around more ministers because we do live in a very specialized um career. It just is. There's not really much comparing it with just about anything else. And so really the only people who can know are people who are kind of in the know, the people who have done it, who have been in that line of work. And yeah, it's hard not to be encouraged when you're with a group of ministers and you feel that experience because
Definitely.
it is just so unique. And it's one of the funnier things that I've experienced, and other people have mentioned it before, and I would agree with them. You know, when you're a preacher and you got people who ask you, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" and you say, "I'm a preacher," the reactions that you get are always very interesting. It's usually, "Oh," and then that's kind of
Mm.
the end of the conversation, or "Oh, okay," and then still like it's just okay, we're not going to talk about that any further. They ask me what my wife does and I say, okay, well, she's biomedical technician, or they ask what degree she got, a biomedical engineering degree. Then it's, oh, there's 20,000 questions, but then it's like, oh yeah, I'm a preacher, and they're like, okay.
Mm.
And
One of the
then
biggest conversation killers.
end of conversation very quickly because they feel like they just can't talk to you. um
Yes, that's
I
very
kind
true.
I kind of had an interesting experience actually referring to that where I'll talk about where I've seen God is the fact that after everything that happened with the storms, a lot of people have had a lot of repercussions with the places they live and everything. I had very little. However, our hot water heater stopped working, and thankfully, at this point, I'm still renting. I want to be buying a home pretty soon, but I'm renting. And the nice thing is when something happens and you're renting, all you have to do is call someone, and then someone else pays to get things fixed. So
That's
that's
it.
what happened. Yes, that's what happened. Somebody came out to fix our hot water heater, and as I'm out there, kind of seeing if he needed any help or anything like that. He of course asked me the question, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" And I say, "Okay, hey, I'm a minister." And he's like, "Oh, great." And he kind of talks to me about, how he went through this long discipleship training and all this other kind of stuff.
Mm.
But he started talking to me about struggles he was having in his life and different things that he had going on with his family life and everything else that was happening. And we just kind of chatted for a while, and I was able to pray for him, and I continue to say some prayers for him, but it was really nice to have kind of the opposite experience that I just referenced, which is you say you're a preacher and somebody clams up and immediately changes topics, but instead somebody who says, "Oh, this is somebody who I can talk to about the different things that are happening in life, even though I don't know him, even though he is just somebody whose hot water heater I'm supposed to be fixing." He felt like he could talk to me about those kind of things, and we could pray, and we could really kind of it's not like I had some magical fix for him, because we don't always have those things. But what I could do is I could pray for him, and that's what I did and continue to do.
That's cool. And those are opportunities that all Christians have. We can look for ways to show people that we're Christians and then also offer support. And that's a really cool thing. I'm glad you were able to have that experience.
Yeah.
So thinking about, our lives as Christians, and one of the important things we do is we dig into the Word, and we're digging into something that Dakota and I neither know exactly how to talk about it. So, and one of the most famous judges that we're getting, really in all the book is Samson. But when you really think about Samson's life, you realize how complicated it is. You dig in and you're like, well, Samson did this, that was good, but was it really? Or, what was God's will in this situation? And how do we explain God's will? Oftentimes God's will is easy to explain once it's written to us. But even some things that we read in the scriptures that are God's will, we're like, well, how or why? So as we get into this, you'll begin to see that. But Dakota, would you be willing to read Judges 13 verses 2-5?
Yes, absolutely. So Judges chapter 13, 2-5, we read about the prophecy of Samson's birth. So it says in verse 2, "There was a certain man of Zorah of the tribe of the Danites, whose wife was Manoah, and his wife was barren and had no children. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, Behold, you are barren and have not borne children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Therefore, be careful and drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean. For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. No razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to serve Israel from the hand, save Israel from the hand of the Philistines."
We can see in this time, the Philistines were one of the great enemies of God's people, and God was going to raise up a judge that was going to help deliver them. In verse 1 of that chapter, we see that the people were evil again, and it was the Philistines that God gave them into the hand of. But Dakota, when you read that, what are some things that stick out about this Nazarite vow that Manoah's wife was supposed to undergo and would be the same for Samson?
Yeah, so we see this is kind of a special covenant between a person and God that they make, and it was and the prophetic announcement was that this child was to be really a Nazarite from before they were even born. Samson's supposed to be, and really the main qualifications for somebody who is under a Nazarite vow is that they consume no alcohol, they touch nothing unclean, and that they keep their hair long, and that there would be no razor that would cut their hair at this point. And so this is the prophecy that was made so that Samson could be a Nazarite and he would be kind of set apart and special. Issue is, though, of course, as we're going to get into this story and we're going to see kind of in the complicated nature of the story of Samson, is that at some point he definitely fails clearly in the text two of these three things, and it's implied that he fails a third as well, and he fails on kind of all these accounts. And yet we also know that he has the part of the prophecy is what was that he is going to save Israel from the Philistines, which even though he fails, even though he's going to fail in seemingly all three of these areas, God is still going to achieve the goal that he has through Samson, even in his weakness.
Yeah, definitely. And so this is, again, when we think about the Old Testament, how complicated some things can be, what God is able to do in certain circumstances. We just need to be reminded of that. And we can do our best to please God, but at the end of the day, we're not going to be perfect. We're going to make mistakes. And hopefully, we learn from those and we repent, we get back up again. But we know that God's will be done. And so, as Dakota pointed out, there's some specific things related to this Nazirite vow. It's something that you might read at other points in the Bible, but here are some of one of the earliest people who had this vow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think Samson's probably one of our most famous people who ever took the Nazarite vow at this point. But kind of an interesting thing. We're going to get more into as we go through the story of Samson, but certainly very interesting thing to start from. So Michael, as we transition to the third portion of our podcast today, as we get into what we've been reading, I want to go ahead and ask you what you have been reading recently.
Continuing through trust, started that a few weeks ago and really enjoying that. And he begins by giving in the kind of front portion of the book the 5 essentials to trust. And they are understanding, motive, ability, character, and track record. And he uses in the book the instance of him having to have his knee replaced and how he went through a couple of doctors because he didn't trust them, and not in the ways that we think of. We think of character, number 4, that fourth essential. We think of trust like that. Someone is trustworthy. They have good character. They have integrity. But it's also when it comes to trust, it depends on what you are entrusting them to do. Do they have the ability to do that? Are they someone who's talented enough, or do they have the training? And then you think also about the track record. Have they done it? When you think about a job, have they had experience in that particular job or in that particular situation? But the varying levels of trust. Recently, excuse me. Recently, I flew in a plane with someone. I am averse to flying. I'm afraid of flying. And I've come to learn through that experience that a lot of it has to do with motion sickness. But one of the elders at church here, he's a pilot, and he flew for American Airlines for over 30 years. And he was in the military and flew. And so like he is about as experienced as you can be as a pilot. And so I trusted him. I trust him as a person. I trust him as a pilot. And so I went up with him. Mackenzie and I did. And I had a great experience. I learned a lot, and he was able to talk me through a lot of my issues with flying or understanding of that. And so I trusted him, and it involves these different layers. One other that I'll consider is understanding. We won't trust people, especially personally, when we don't feel that we're heard or that our needs are understood. And so if we're looking to develop trust with others, it's going to involve a lot of listening and trying to help support others. But it's been great hearing Dr. Cloud go through each of these essentials of trust and how important they are.
Absolutely. It's a very powerful story, because I know you're not a big flying person. I know you've had those experiences, but yeah, that's
and maybe I'll talk about it more at another time. But just again, those 5 essentials, kind of thinking about them, is understanding, motive, ability, character, and track record. And many of them, explain themselves. But yeah, it was a cool experience. Like I said, I might share more about it another time. But Dakota, what is it you're reading?
I'll just share some of your stories, because I've heard a couple of them from your bad flying experiences, but that's another day.
Yeah. Maybe maybe we talk about trauma.
Yeah, sure. We can talk about that sometime. I've been continuing reading through Emotionally Healthy Spirituality by Peter Scazzero. And this week, he was reading through, and he was talking about how we can see biblical examples, even to kind of the first family that God chose to give a blessing through, being Abraham and then Isaac and then Jacob. He talks about how we have to be. Last week I talked about knowing ourselves, and he talked about that. Well, this week I read to the next chapter, and he's been talking about not only just knowing yourself, but having to kind of go back to go forward, seeing what in your life, what in your family's situation affects the way you do things going forward. And he emphasized, we see things in Isaac's life and Jacob's life, and then even Jacob's son's life, that the consequences started all the way up at Abraham.
Mm,
And there's a multi-generational issues, no, multi-generational issues that are coming up that didn't get resolved. And he talked about how, Joseph at the end kind of had to break, as a very popular word that we have nowadays is the kind of the generational curses of this way, the things that follow us through. And he kind of had to be the breaking point because he was a little bit different in these ways. He's kind of started as seemingly kind of like of an arrogant, the favorite arrogant kid, and he ends up breaking a lot of those tendencies through a lot of very tough and difficult experiences, but staying strong through those and becoming what he becomes. But I think this is so important for us as it regards our modern day and the fact that, he also emphasized in the chapter that, there's people who go to church for their entire lives, and it does not feel like at all the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ. They may have accepted it, but is it changing their lives? Are they
mm,
still dealing with generational issues? Because they can go to church as much as they want to, they can hear all the sermons, but unless there is an active willingness to have Jesus in their whole lives, affecting
mm,
everything, and also going back and seeing where some of the tentacles of sin have crept into their life from generational issues, how they can, if they don't take that step in doing those sorts of things, then it's going to look, a lot of their life is still going to look like it's in darkness and in sin because they have never allowed the light of Christ to shine in those areas and to explore those areas and to know themselves deeper, especially on, as we talked about, a generational level. And so I think this is, again, important for us to understand as we've kind of become more aware in our modern
mm,
world and society that, hey, there are things that are passed down to us. Maybe that part of
mm.
that's the fact that we always want to blame the older people for things, but we have an awareness of these things, but instead of saying, oh, it's my parents, my grandparents, blah 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 blah, maybe we can look to say, well, how much they improved from their grandparents and from,
Mm,
those kind of those kind of things, and to say, how can I get even better so that way I don't pass these things along to my children? How can I look
mm,
to have Christ's light in my life to take care of some of these areas instead of just throwing my hands up and saying, well, my grandfather was an angry alcoholic and my dad was angry all the time, and so then I'm just going to be angry because that's just what is what's going on in the family. We say, well, how can we look to heal those things in Christ and not pass that
mm.
along to the next generation?
Yeah, no, that's a really good thing. And when you're going through premarital counseling, you talk about that. What is your family of origin like? And we kind of stop there, or we stop thinking about it maybe, or we just don't ever think about it in life. Maybe you don't have an instance like that, but that's really healthy to think about the habits of your parents and how much we are like them, and
Hmm.
how it is a challenge if they are negative habits, if they're sinful habits, toxic habits, whatever. It's hard to break those, and to move past those. So I'm sure, spiritually speaking, that's a very good thing to do, and a good way to look within. I'm sure that's a good section. By the way, Pete Scazzaro is being interviewed on the Carrie Newhoff Leadership Podcast before long, so I'll have to let you know
Oh, look at
when
that.
he gets interviewed. So
Yes, you have to
yeah.
tell me because we've read one of his books before as a group, and then I've read even more of his books. I'm a big fan of kind of him exploring the deep depths of himself, especially as
Mm,
it regards being doing that in Christ. And so
yeah.
I really appreciate him saying those things. That's why I read all his books, and I would suggest that if you're out there and you especially got some emotional things you need to work through, as most of us do, I would suggest his books to read.
Mm. Good deal. We really appreciate everybody listening today and always. I know we're going through some scheduling changes, and we hope that it's not too big of an inconvenience for you, but we're trying to make things better. We're trying to improve things, but we really appreciate you joining us today on the M&M Discipleship Podcast. Until next time, let's look for God, learn from his word, and live out his teachings. Bye for now.